Hi, this is Jason Gardner here for book review. Today's book reviewing today, Predators, edited by Ed Goreman and Martin H. Greenberg. I really like this cover. This is a really sick cover. Alright. This is from Rock, and this was published in October 1994. This was a decent horror anthology. Like, this had some really good short horror stories in it. However, some I felt were like way too short. Like, I was thinking to myself, these stories would be better if they were longer, had more to them. But other than that, I still enjoyed it. There was not many stories in here that I actually liked. There's only out of the most of the stories, only 6 of them I liked. I was hoping for a little more. But overall, at least it was a decent horror anthology. Unlike one horror anthology I read, what was that? That Pan Dark Voices horror anthology. I tried that, and it had not a single story I didn't like in it. But this one at least had some decent stories in it. There were some I really felt they could have been better. Others I felt were kind of really like either too strange for my liking, or just really I didn't like them. Or some I felt that could have been a lot better, but I'll explain more about that later on my review. Overall, this was a decent horror anthology. Like, this has a lot of big-name authors in it, and so some of these stories might interest you if you want to check this horror anthology out. I still like to find one where it's got just a lot of really good stories in it, pretty much all of the stories I like, with only a few that I don't like. But overall, as I said, this was a decent horror anthology. Alright, on to the book review, and spoiler alert, as I will be giving away crucial details within the short stories. Hard Shell by Dean R. Koontz. Detective Frank Shaw is pursuing a serial killer, Carl Skaggs, in a warehouse within the city of Los Angeles. Carl has killed over 22 victims all alone, as Frank won't allow Carl out of his sight and refuses to call for backup, only armed with his Smith Wesson .38 revolver with a custom shoulder stock. He chases after Carl while a raging thunderstorm roars outside of the warehouse. Carl is a 6-foot-tall and heavily built man, proves to be difficult to kill, as Frank has shot him several times but doesn't seem to be slowing down, as it seems none of his shots affect him. Carl tries to crush Frank with heavy crates and even swing a 2x4 at him while taunting him. However, Frank isn't going down that easily. He's also an ex-Marine and served in the Vietnam War and joined the LAPD after the war. Known by his friends as Hard Shell, as no matter what he goes up against or what anybody throws at him, he's one tough man saying nobody will ever crack his shell. After shooting Carl off a shelf, falling to the floor and capping off several rounds into Carl, he reveals he isn't human as he heals his wounds and begins to change his body. It becomes muscular and his arms turn to claws, which he tries to kill Frank, dodging his attacks and being chased by this monster. Frank tries crushing him with a crate, which only causes Carl to reform his body into a lizard-like spider. Frank shoots him off the ceiling but is low on ammo. Frank goes outside as Carl corners him in his hideous form. Frank desperately fires his remaining bullets into Carl's head, but it has no effect. Carl laughs and taunts how easy humans are to hunt and kill, and enjoys this deadly game with Frank and is looking forward to make him scream in terror. But Frank refuses to give up and tells Carl no matter what he tries to do, he'll never crack him. Carl then lunges his arms into Frank as he stabs his chest, but is unable to penetrate his body and can't pull out. To Carl's horror, Frank also reveals he isn't human and changes into his real form and begins draining the life force out of Carl. Losing his power, Carl desperately tries to escape Frank by growing wings, but it's no use. He can't escape Frank's tight grip and collapses onto the floor, changing him back into his human form, and dies. Returning himself to normal, Frank wraps up Carl's corpse, then drags it into the trunk of his Chevy, leaves the warehouse and buries Carl's body, then goes home, makes himself some popcorn, along with a cold beer, and puts on a movie and relaxes. The Rubber Smile, John Shirley. Doc Chambers and Shredder, 2 film students at NYC, are watching footage of a new slasher film, The Rubber Smile, a film about a serial killer wearing a grinning rubber mask. Shredder is a big horror buff and has collected dozens of films, albums, novels, and even posters featuring violence. Chambers, on the other hand, isn't a big horror fan and dislikes going to the theater as he gets nervous sitting around other people. This slasher film is very different from the others they have seen, as it looks very real and none of the actors they know of. The two wonder if it's a snuff film and plan to investigate further, as there's a cult based around this film. Chambers goes to Times Square to check out the slasher film. Along the way there, he notices more people wearing the rubber smile mask, giving him the creeps. He's then shocked to discover a sequel, The Rubber Smile Part 2, is already out. Chambers goes to the payphone to call Shredder, telling him that a sequel to the slasher film is already out. Slasher replies he'll be there. Suddenly, the glass window smashes next to Chambers, making him jump, and a piece of broken glass cuts his cheek. When he turns, he sees a man wearing a rubber smile mask looking at him before leaving. After getting bandages for his wound, Chambers goes to the theater. As Chambers sits down, he notices all the people watching this film are wearing those masks and a few glancing at him. When the film begins, it feels very real and shock gorilla style. Chambers hears the rubber smile mask fans giggling and even laughing at the deaths, which Chambers finds them way too real. Just as the film is over, he's about to leave when suddenly all the rubber smile fans confront him and take him to the front stage, with the leader revealing to be Shredder. He states that horror films aren't good enough, as the real thing is so much better, and it saves costs of hiring real actors and special effects. Chambers tells off Shredder, which he chuckles and plans to have him star in the next film. Chambers charges at Shredder and knocks him to the floor, causing him to drop a butcher knife. Chambers grabs it and stabs Shredder to death. Suddenly the audience screams and flees, with a cop appearing. Chambers attempts to flee but is shot down by the cop, who also saw the rubber smile and comments that rubber smile is too damn real. Slasher, F. Paul Wilson. Pete Santos is at the funeral of his 5-year-old daughter, Jessica, who was kidnapped during a 4th of July party. She was found a few days later out in the forest, cut to ribbons. Pete is furious that the police haven't found the killer yet, along with his wife divorcing him, as she blames him for not watching his daughter. The murder of Jessica has caused Pete to become a loner and refuses to clear out his daughter's room. He then meets FBI agent Gerard Casey, or goes by the name Grady. He has Pete get into his Ford sedan and warns him the information he's about to share cannot tell anyone or go public with it either. Casey has found Jessica's killer, but she's in witness protection program in the middle of bringing down a wanted mafia crime boss. And it so happens that she was being held in the area where his daughter was. They don't want the public they don't want to go public, as it would embarrass the FBI if the media got wind that they were responsible for her death. Cassidy promises once they deal with the crime boss, they'll put Jessica's killer away for good. However, with no breakthrough on this case, Pete shows up at the FBI office and threatens to go public with this story if Casey doesn't tell him who the killer's name is and where to find her. After some threats and blackmail, Casey gives in and reveals the killer's name is Regina Chula and is in the wealthy side of Long Island. Pete takes the largest kitchen knife from his house and follows Regina. He sneaks inside her house and stabs her to death while yelling, "This is for Jessica." Pete is later arrested, and after telling his story, he is told there is no FBI agent Casey, and the woman he murdered was Maureen Jensen, wife of Harold Jensen. But when he believes it's Casey that comes in, it is in fact Harold, and he used Pete to murder his wife to collect her insurance, and he was the one who murdered his daughter. As Pete is being taken away by police, Harold winks at him along with giving him the thumbs up, knowing he used him. To Die For by Ed Naha. John Showman, a wealthy film producer, is enjoying his life in his fancy chrome and glass office in Hollywood to his big mansion in Malibu. His latest films, Dead Parents Trap, Thanksgiving Carve Up, and Honey, I Slashed the Kids. Showman also enjoys driving his red Porsche, along with spending money on anything he wants, calling it toys. However, not everything is perfect in his life. His wife hardly has sex with him, as she's always busy and has gotten bored of her. His 9-year-old son Bobby isn't doing well in school, as he spends most of his days and nights playing video games on his Nintendo, and he refuses to help his son out as he gets his wife to do everything in the house. After returning home from work, Showman is glued to his TV trying to find something to watch when he sees a commercial for a wall-sized TV. The picture is clearer and sharper. It feels more real and is loaded with many features as it's to die for. When a number appears on the screen, Showman quickly writes it down, then calls Really Rich Toys ordering this massive TV. 3 weeks later, the TV arrives as Showman has it installed in his house. Bobby tries getting his father to see his school principal, but tells him to get his mother to handle it. Bobby hops on his skateboard and leaves. Once the wall-sized TV is set up, Showman flips through channels and finds a fitness station with women working out on it. He becomes sexually attracted to them and finds himself entering the TV screen. He then realizes he's on the set and grabs one of the women, tearing off her clothes as the others scream in terror. Showman rapes and murders her and returns back home as he lived out a fantasy he wants. Flipping through the TV guide as Showman enters shows, movies, killing people along with having sex with women. His wife Melissa is annoyed with her husband's latest purchase as he spends hours watching it and refuses to help out his son. One night, Showman is in an old black and white film featuring Humphrey Bogart. Showman is about to assault the woman when suddenly Bobby comes in and changes the channel to A Nightmare on Elm Street. Showman appears and tries getting Bobby to change the channel back, but watches as Freddy Krueger slashes his father to death. Bobby then shuts off the TV, going to bed. Bobby is sitting in the principal's office as he wants to speak with his father about his son's low grades. Bobby then calls in his father, and the principal is shocked when he sees Humphrey Bogart walk in, lighting a cigarette, and threatens the principal to fix Bobby's grades or else. Principal nods his head as Bobby and Bogart leave together, as Bobby thanks for being a helpful father. Bogart asks how fast his new Porsche can go. Bobby replies, very fast. Bogart smiles and says, "You know, Bobby, I think this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship." Dead Things Don't Move. Lawrence Walt Evans. Sitting inside their van on a dark, cold autumn night, 2 thieves and killers, Jack and Sid, have been stalking out a house for 3 days. Sid assures Jack that only one woman lives there and nobody else visits other than the kid who delivers newspaper. The 2 men, armed with double-barrel shotguns, leave the van and approach the large house. Jack doesn't like the place as it gives him the creeps. As they reach the front door, the woman opens it as she's wearing a nightgown. Jack presses the barrel of the shotgun on her chin and squeezes the trigger, blowing her head off. Shocked by the bloody mess he caused, Sid tries to keep him on track as they plan to steal any valuable furniture and sell it in New York. As they explore the large house, Jack thinks he heard something move, but Sid reminds him that dead things don't move. However, as Sid is in the middle looking for something to take, he is stabbed in the side by a butcher knife as a young girl wearing a similar nightgown and said, "You killed my mother." Sid is stabbed to death as Jack calls out for him. He then hears a girl's voice yell, "Don't move." Jack spins around to see a young girl holding Sid's shotgun as she's covered in blood. She angrily told him not to move and shoots Jack in the head, blowing it off. The Man Who Collected Knives by John Gregory Benancourt. On his 13th birthday, Jason is given a pocket knife by his father. His mother thinks it's too dangerous, but his father states Jason is becoming a man and is old enough to own one. This begins a hobby as Jason collects more knives as he gets older, from a bowie knife, a meat cleaver, to hunting knives. Despite being a loner during his high school years, he forms a relationship with Joanne. Getting a job at the metal shop, but Jason spends most of his money on knives, which annoys Joanne. Then he begins seeing a bat-like creature who comes to aid him when he's lonely or doubting himself. Years later, Jason marries Joanne, but things aren't working between the two of them. While preparing for dinner, Joanna asks where the rest of his money from his job. Jason replies he spent it on a bayonet. Outraged, Joanne leaves him as she files for divorce. Lonely and angry, his bat friend appears and tells him to take a knife onto the subway and kill someone. When Jason sees a lonely boy, he stabs him in the stomach with the knife, flees on a train. His bat friend asks if he enjoyed it. At first, Jason is scared, but soon overcomes his fear. Jason begins killing people with knives as his bat friend encourages him to do it, along with making him sleep naked. Jason then buys a saber sword and sharpens the blade. His bat friend tells him to go see Joanne and take the sword. He does as he travels through the graffiti-covered subway and walking down the dark, empty streets. When he reaches Joanna's house, she tries to make him go away, but is able to talk his way inside as he brought her a gift. Jason reveals the saber she orders him to leave. When he hears his bad friend yell "now," Jason hacks up Joanne's body, causing blood to splatter and several limbs on the floor. Jason grins with his bat friend as he takes Joanne's heart. Predators was a decent collection of short horror stories. While I liked some better than others, however, the rest of the stories were either too strange for my liking or not good enough, along with the rest being difficult to understand them. One theme I noticed in a few of the stories was authors trying to mix noir with horror, as I felt these two genres weren't mixing well together. While I liked the darkness and brutal moments within the stories, I enjoyed along with some dark humor as well. However, I felt some of the later stories were too short and wished they were longer. Overall, it's up to you if you want to check out Predators. It might have some short horror stories you'll like. Alright, that's it for the book. That's it for the book review. So I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, out of most of the short stories I read, these were the 6 that I liked. So the very first story, I'll just go through each one. Okay, the first story. Oh, okay. The first story, Hard Shell, it made me think of The Hidden, one of my favorite like 80s science fiction movies. The more I read this story, I was like, this is making me think of Hidden, where basically you got a cop that's going up against a killer who's not human, and the book actually doesn't reveal if he's like a demon or an alien from another world. The author never reveals that. He makes it kind of more like a mystery of who Carl really is and stuff. And then the whole like plot twist when it reveals that Frank is also an alien himself, or some supernatural being, and is able to defeat Carl at the end. So I really enjoyed that story. And also, when I first read it, I was thinking to myself, is this set like in the 30s or 40s? Because when the author describes the character using like a .38 revolver, and the way he was writing, I thought, I get a feeling this is like set in like in the 30s or 40s. But then when the author mentioned, of course, that he was a Vietnam vet, I thought, okay, so it's not set in that era. It's set in either like kind of like I was thinking like late 70s or 80s even, with the setting for it. But reading the scenes of the two characters going at it with each other in this warehouse during this intense thunderstorm, I really enjoyed it. That was a really good story. I really liked it. The Rubber Smile by John Shuri was another good one. This is like when I was reading this story, it made me think of the Scream series. I really got to check that movie series out, where basically it's like this like hit slasher film, and it's become so popular people are now wearing masks of the killer, which is kind of similar to like the way there's Scream movies, how this killer becomes like kind of like an urban legend, and people start wearing masks of the killer. So this was an interesting story about basically you got a person who's obsessed with horror and wants to like kind of like uncover like every unknown horror film, novel, album, or whatever, and is having this guy who really isn't a fan of horror, is just making him do what he wants. And when they discover this this new slasher film, they're like, there's so much, like the thing is, there's so much mystery behind it. They don't know who the director is, who stars in it, and they find it's very real, so they're intrigued. It's like, is this a snuff film? As that was a thing that was very big back in the 80s, was slasher films, and then the whole like kind of like found footage and snuff films and stuff. So I like the setting too of the story. It takes place in like the square in New York City, where they have a lot of like theaters, and it's described like very dirty, grimy, the graffiti, and that's the era of New York I love reading about. And the whole twist at the end I really liked, where it's revealed that the Shredder is the one behind this Rubber Smile film, and he was just basically going to kill off his assistant, who he felt was basically just become unreliable, essentially. And I thought this was a really fun story, so I really enjoyed that one. Alright. And then the next story, Slasher by F. Paul Wilson. When I first read the title, I thought myself, ooh, this is going to be like a slasher-themed story. This is more like a murder mystery, revenge story with a plot twist, and I really enjoyed this one, where you got a father who just lost his daughter, and is basically caused the end of his relationship with his wife, and it causes him to be depressed and a loner, and he's unable to let go of his daughter, and he is just has like built up anger, and he wants to find the person responsible for this. And then when he's confronted by an FBI agent telling him that they already have his killer, but they can't go public with it, it causes tension between the two characters, and this leads to the main character basically being driven to extreme measures to get revenge on the person that killed his daughter, only to find out he was used by the killer himself, which I thought was a really strange story. I was thinking to myself, how would you know this guy would do the things that he does? Like, that was my only thing, but it was still a good story. The ending I had to kind of read a second time because I thought, wait a minute. I actually thought for a minute, was the main character the killer himself, and basically this FBI agent was basically not a real person. His imagination made it up. But when I read the ending a second time, I was like, okay, I get it now. The killer used him to basically bump off his wife and basically killed his daughter to drive him to murder. So that was an interesting story. Apparently, F. Paul Wilson faked Joe R. Lansdale for the idea for it. Okay. To Die For by Ed Naha. This story was absolutely funny. This was like a dark horror comedy, and I was just laughing when I was reading this story. I like how the main character is this like self-centered jerk who doesn't give a shit about anyone but himself, and he doesn't care if he treats anyone like shit. Like, he just uses people around him, and he's an absolute scumbag. So, and then when the author reveals the movies his latest films that he's worked on, which become these big hits, I absolutely laughed at the Honey, I Slashed the Kids. I was just visualizing in my head what the poster would look like, and the scenes that would have played out if this were real. But it was funny reading that. As Ed Naha is one of the screenwriters who wrote Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, so he was spoofing one of his own movies that he wrote. So then, the guy has it all. He's got a fancy office, a nice mansion. He's got a Porsche. He has it all, but not everything's perfect. As always, these people always want more in their lives. So when he sees an ad for this like wall-sized TV, it's kind of imagining like how big would this thing really be. It kind of makes me think of what back in the early 2000s, there was this really huge TV that you could get, and it was like very expensive, but it's not like the large flat screen TVs we're used to now. This thing was like huge. It would require like the strongest movers to move this thing, and there was a family member that I used to visit their house and play Grand Theft Auto San Andreas and Driver 3, and they had one of these like big huge TVs, and the thing I always wondered was I had to go downstairs, and it was quite a ways to get down to the basement, and I'm thinking to myself, how did they ever get that big TV down here? It's like they had to purposely dig a hole in the ground and then cut a section out of the wall to put it in because it was that big. I always wondered, how did they get that thing in there? It was this huge TV. I can only imagine it must have taken a lot of work to get that big thing through that narrow stairway. But anyway, so when the father sees this like wall-sized TV and it's got all these features, and then the person selling it is saying, there's this one part where I was chuckling a bit where he has like these like hot busty models on the TV, and he goes up to them and he comments saying, "Look how real these boobs are. It's almost like you can feel them from your TV screen." I was chuckling reading this, and then when the person gets it, I was thinking to myself, okay, what's going to happen after he gets this TV? Is something like nefarious going to happen, or is it basically going to turn out one of those things where it turns out too good to be true type things? But it reveals that basically the guy buys this TV, and basically it has the power to make him go into the TV itself, and he can interact with the people on and stuff. I thought, okay, this is interesting, and what the father does, and he's an absolute despicable person. However, towards the end of the story, I noticed there was some grammar errors. the main character, John Showman, his son, his name is Bobby. Well, towards the end of the short story, the author makes a error where he puts Tommy instead of Bobby, and I thought, how did the publisher or editor not notice that? It should be Bobby, not Tommy. And then another error is that when the son Bobby goes to change the channel, he's happy to see that Friday the 13th is on. So I figured, oh, is Jason going to make an appearance? But no, it's Freddy Krueger. I felt, wait, you said the author said he put the channel for changed the channel for Friday the 13th. Instead, it's Freddy Krueger. So I don't know if that was an error on the author's part or the editor messed up. I don't know. I just felt that one part was should have been fixed. But other than that, I really enjoy watching the father getting what he deserves for just being an absolute asshole. Just getting like basically ripped to shreds by Freddy Krueger was fun. I still enjoy that part. I still wish it was Jason. When it first mentioned, I would have loved to see Jason hack up this asshole to death. But the ending where Humphrey Bogart is now filling the role for Bobby's father, I was laughing the whole time. It was just the funniest thing I've read. I really enjoyed it, and it was really funny. So that was a really fun story I read. Okay, Dead Things Don't Move by Lawrence Waltz Evans. This is basically this was a very short story where basically two thieves break into this like woman's house, they kill her, and they're basically going to steal her valuables and stuff. I like the opening part of the story where it's just them sitting in this van, and it's like during autumn, it's very dark, cold, and the main character doesn't like this house they're gonna rob because it just gives them the creeps for some reason, and so it's like, oh, this would be an easy job, and of course it doesn't go as planned, as they're both killed off by this young girl who has a resemblance to the woman, the older woman in the story. So this had like, I was kind of like, is this like a supernatural thing where basically the woman got killed off and got basically came back as a younger girl? The author doesn't explain. It's like a mystery. Was this girl living with this person who claims to be her mother, or did she basically come back younger again? It's never revealed and stuff, but it's a very brutal story, especially with the scene where Jack blows the woman's head off with a shotgun, and it's described in a really like gruesome detail, and I really enjoyed that scene. And then of course when the girl comes in and kills the two guys off, I really enjoyed that scene. It was a lot of fun. And then the last story, The Man Who Collects Knives by John Gregory. This story I liked, but I felt it was way too short. I felt this could have been a little longer, as it basically is about a guy, this guy. He's a loner. He doesn't have many friends. He keeps to himself, and he has a thing for collecting knives, which becomes his hobby. And then, of course, he finds this girl he likes, but then he also starts being visited by this bat-like creature who he calls Friend. I wish the author gave this creature a name, or gave it a name instead of Friend, but the bat persuades him into his acts of violence on other people, as it features one murder, but the story hints that he has begun murdering several people with his collection of knives, and then the bat creature is controlling him, making him do things, and then at the end of the story has him kill off his ex-wife with a saber sword, that scene was really good. I just wish the story was longer, but overall I enjoyed it. And those are the 6 stories that I really liked. Some of the stories that I really did not like in this were, okay, let's see. Okay, Goddamn Time by J.N. Williamson and Scott Fugel. I really did not like this story at all. It's about this abused boy that's hinted that he's having a sexual affair with his grandmother, and she's giving him cocaine. I really didn't like that story. Life Near to the Bone by Billy Sue Mosen. This was a really weird story where this person is basically obsessed with the bones in their body and starts to basically just like do things to live like a horrible lifestyle, and then basically this person starves themselves to death so that way they can pull the flesh off their body so they can feel the bones. It was a really weird story. I didn't like it. Let's see, what else? The Phantom Crown by Christopher Fairey. This was a really weird story where basically this guy gets like a filling in his tooth, and it picks up radio signals, and he starts hearing voices, and this drives him insane to where he basically a very gruesome scene, which made me cringe reading it. Where he basically pulls all his teeth out with a knife, and I was like, oh, that just it made me cringe reading that. I did not like that story at all. And then Ecology of Reptiles by John Cone. This was a really weird story. It takes place in Africa, and I was like, what is going on in this story? You got two couples that are secretly having sex with the other's partner behind their backs, and then later on they get killed by crocodiles. Like, what the hell is going on in this story? I just didn't like that one. Heroes was another one I didn't really get. It didn't make much sense. And then Rubies and Pearls by Rick Tanaha. This was another weird one where basically it's like a person on death row, and when he awakens, everyone is made of pearls and rubies, and then when they're smashed, it's revealed to be like the victims he's killed, and he's being tormented by them. It was a really weird story. Slip by Richard Lehman was a story I did not like at all. It's basically about this guy who wants to kill this woman that he really likes, but he cannot bring himself to do it, and he's constantly fighting with his bloodlust to not kill her, knowing that if he does, people will know it's him. And and there's a part in the story where he tries to bump someone else off, but he has a fear of seeing people bleed, and this makes him like a nervous wreck. And he's constantly carrying band-aids with him because if he cuts himself, he gets like just terrified seeing his own blood. So then he tries to kill this woman with a knife, but then she has him sexually play with his pocket knife by cutting off her like bra and skirt, and then she fools around with it, making him like squirm. And I was like, really? This is a lame story. I just didn't like it at all, and I thought I was expecting something else from it. Yeah, there was a bunch of other stories I didn't like, but overall, out of those stories, only 6 of them I enjoyed. So yeah, this was a decent horrorology. Alright, that's it for the book review today. I hope you enjoyed. And sorry this took so long. Originally, I was going to have another horror manga review by Junji Ito. It was his collection of short stories, Shiver. But I didn't really like any of the stories at all. There was none I really liked. So I was kind of debating, did I really review this or the horror anthology? And I decided to stick with the horror anthology because that at least had some stories I liked. So I ended up basically scrapping the Shivers review, as I thought there's really no point of reviewing that because none of the stories I really liked, and there was really nothing positive to say. So I decided it was not worth reviewing Shivers. I decided just to do Predators instead. That's why this review took so long. Then of course I had to plow through the horror novel The Lake to catch up. This whole month has been going by so fast. I swear, even with the clock set at our back, time still feels is going much faster than it should be, if you ask me. But I'm going to. I already got my next book picked out, and I'm going to get started on my next book series. I decided to do this one first. I'll still do the other book series to finish up the Cyberpunk Series 2, but because this month has gone by so fast, I gotta catch up, as I haven't even started my Jack Ryan series, which is gonna take a long time to get through those books. So I decided I'm gonna go through the shortest book series first, so that way I can get caught up. That's what I'm gonna do. Alright, that's our review today. I hope you enjoyed it, and please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to October Library, the YouTube channel where I post book reviews, book hauls, and other fiction-related content. Until then, I'll catch you later.